Okay, hello, good evening. Welcome to our live session tonight. We're going to be talking about the benefits of attending a four-year college or university. This is the fifth of a series of six live panel discussions with our friends from Oregon colleges and universities. And so if you've missed any of the previous ones, please do check out OregonGoesToCollege.org, the virtual college night. All of those are hanging out there for you to check out and see some additional information. But tonight, I'm excited to have a conversation with these three friends from Oregon colleges, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. And so if we can, what I'd love to know is your name, the institution that you work at, and one reason that you decided to attend college. So as you know, we're in the midst of college application week, and students are thinking about college now. So we'd love to hear some ideas from you about, your own story, why you went. So name, institution, and why you chose to attend college. And Maddie, I'm going to start with you.
Excellent. Well, hello to everyone viewing. I am Maddie. I am from Pacific University out in Forest Grove, Oregon. And one reason that I chose to go to college was for athletics. So I wasn't thinking about college. No one in my family had ever been to college. So I'm a first generation college student. So when I was looking to colleges, it was conversations about athletics. So that was really what kind of drove me to actually seek another degree. So that's why I chose to go to college. But there's many other reasons, which we'll talk about again tonight.
Great, thanks. Sue.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Adrienne. My name's Sue Corner. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. And I thought a little bit about this question today. I just think it was sort of expected of me that I go to college. My parents were both first generation college students, so there was not a long college going culture in my family, but I think their experience was so transformational to their lives that I just grew up knowing that I would follow in those footsteps. So they both went to Oregon State and I chose a private college, but I just think it was something I always assumed I would do because they had always talked about their experience.
Great, thank you, Sue. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Jen. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an admissions counselor with Western Oregon University. One reason I decided to go to college was because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So I decided to go to a liberal arts college to get a bunch of different experience with a lot of different types of schooling and things like that. Another big one was to get away from my parents. So I know that that can be a common one as well.
I think you're right. I think that can be a common reason. There are lots of good reasons. I want to let our viewers who are watching us live know that if you have some questions for our panelists, you can certainly ask them as we're talking. If you just enter those into the YouTube chat, we can get those into Zoom and ask our panelists those questions. And I'm going to start, Jen, you said a word, liberal arts, that I think some people know what that is and others are a little bit confused about that. In fact, we often hear questions about, like, there's so many different kinds of colleges or so many different names and words that get used around colleges and universities. And sometimes there's some confusion about what those different words mean. And so I have a few different things that, a few different words that people have been wondering about. And I'm going to start with asking if you can explain some of those differences. And I think I want to start just like really basically, what's the difference between a 2-year and a 4-year college or university? Jen, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, for sure. So typically the main difference between a 2-year and a 4-year college or university is just the degree that you're going to end up getting. So if you want to get an associate's degree versus a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science, that would be kind of the decision that you're making. If you want an associate's, you would go to a 2-year college. Bachelor's would be a 4-year.
Great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about students who might want to transfer from one to the other and how that works out as well, to be able to earn both an associate's and a bachelor's. So we'll get to that if that's on your mind of something you're thinking about. Sue, do you want to tackle the question about the difference between a liberal arts college and a research university, and just sort of what is the liberal arts? What does it mean?
Sure, definitely. Everything that we're saying is kind of in, generalizations. Of course, there are lots of kind of nuances to this, but generally, liberal arts colleges are smaller communities. The degrees are often a little bit more generalized. So you think of majors in the liberal arts as being broad-based, things like biology, or economics, or English, these broad-based areas of study that can actually lead to ultimately quite a range of career paths. They're sort of open in terms of where you might go with that degree. Whereas research universities are often bigger, larger communities. And the degrees very often are far more specified and sort of put you on a pretty specific career path. So you might major in something like nursing or teaching or engineering at a research university. And there are certainly pluses and minuses to both types of institutions. And I think part of the college search process is helping students to assess what kind of learner they are, what kind of community is most appealing to them, and where they might most thrive, as they work to learn about these two different types of institutions. One point of confusion is that, well, at a liberal arts college, I can't study the sciences, or conversely, at a research university, I couldn't be an English major because they just do research and science. And both of those things are false. There are fabulous programs in all of those things at both types of institutions.
Yeah, it can be very confusing. I think that's why we get questions about that often. Thank you. And Maddie, I'm going to ask you to just explain, if you can, the difference between a public university and a private college or university.
Yeah, there's a few differences when it comes to size. So thinking about what you do well in a classroom environment. Do you like to be in the middle of conversations, being able to raise your hand, have the professor, the teacher that you're working with know your name, call on you? Some people are a little intimidated by that. So thinking about large lecture halls like you see in the movies with, hundreds of students. Public schools, you're going to have that larger environment in the classroom. Certainly, as you get into, some of the last years that you're there, those classes will probably start to get smaller. But then at a private school, you're going to start out with those small classes from the very beginning. So think about where you do best in the classroom, thinking public versus private. Another really important distinction between the two is cost. So public schools are oftentimes going to be less expensive, while private schools are going to be sometimes more expensive. Now, that doesn't always equate for what you end up paying. So oftentimes at private schools, you have scholarship opportunities, so free money right from the start. Whereas public schools, there might not be as many scholarships from the very beginning, but both are going to have, opportunities for you to get financial aid. So you can use state financial aid like loans and things at either one. But I would say those are two really big pieces of the public versus private education.
Yep. And I think that one of the other pieces to note is just sort of where the funding for those colleges come from and why we call them public versus private. Public colleges receive funding from the state. So the public universities in the state are receiving, and the public community colleges are receiving money from the state of Oregon. And that's why often we see in-state and out-of-state tuitions being different. Students who live in the state that the university is located in, their families are paying taxes that help to fund those universities. And so there is a break on the tuition. And that's just not the case with private schools, right? Their money is coming from different places. Public universities get money from other places as well, but they do also have funding from the state. So that's the primary difference with that funding piece there. The other thing that I would note is that, Maddie, I think that you're absolutely right. In the state of Oregon, it is very common that our private colleges are smaller than our public universities. But in fact, across the country, there are some very large private universities and also some very small public universities. So all of these definitions, it's no wonder that there's a little bit of confusion because there's not really easy answers to any of them. And that's part of the process of figuring out what's going to fit best for you. I have a question about, we're here to talk about the benefits of a four-year college or university. Last night, we talked about the benefits of community college. And one of the things that came up was the finances of that, right? That it can be less expensive in terms of the tuition dollars that are charged to attend a community college. That was one of the things that came up. I have a question for the three of you, if you would like to weigh in. Are there any financial benefits that might exist to starting at a four-year college or university, right out of high school or as your first step? Are there benefits to starting in that four-year college? Sue, are you willing to start us off on that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there are some very obvious financial benefits to taking that 2-year to 4-year route. So I can understand why that came up last night. At Willamette, the scholarships that we offer, which are significant, the merit scholarships that we offer, they are slightly better for first-year students than they are for transfer students. And that is not an atypical model for a lot of, at least for private colleges. So you have a little bit more opportunity to earn a slightly higher merit scholarship if you start with us right from the beginning. Also, there are a number of scholarships that happen that kick in after you're at Willamette. So there's opportunity to earn dollars that come with once you've committed to a certain major. There are even earning opportunities like being a resident assistant in our residence hall. So a job opportunity on campus, which pays full room and board. It's a really great job in terms of compensation. And so those things are more available to students who come in with us sooner and then have opportunity to take advantage of those things. If you're with us only for the latter half of your kind of 4 years, some of those things just have already been claimed by other students or the jobs are harder to get. So those would be a couple of the things that come to mind for me.
Okay. Jen, I saw you nodding to a little bit in there. So it sounds like that resonated with you. Did you have other things you wanted to share?
I definitely want to echo everything that Sue was saying. You definitely can get your foot in the door for a lot of college work opportunities, especially the ones that can give you room and board as a part of your compensation, or even room and board with some stipends on top of that. So those are really great opportunities that first-year freshmen that come traditionally right after they graduate high school can really take advantage of. I would say also, typically students who come out of four-year colleges do get higher pay rates in their jobs. So that's something to think about as well.
Okay. What about, are there any advantages to starting at a four-year college when it comes to things like retention and completion of your degree? Who would like to tackle that question?
I can certainly speak to a bit of that at Pacific and maybe generally in college as well. But part of the piece in retention and helping you to complete your degree is your community. We have to talk about that at Pacific. So your academic community. So not only the people that are helping you pick your classes, helping you figure out that class in education wasn't your favorite, and it turns out you like computer science. Okay, so the academic community really helps you as you're navigating what it is you want to do with your life, what it is you want to do after your degree. So whether you're coming in knowing exactly what you want to do or you're there to figure it out, attending college, right in that 4-year degree will give you the opportunity to have that support from day one. Meet people that are going to be able to know who you are and figure out what it is you want to do. That's going to help you return each year. It's going to help you complete that degree, especially completing that degree in 4 years. So still having the opportunity to explore, but be on track for those 4 years. So I'd say that's one really big piece to retention and completion in a 4-year.
Okay, thank you. Sue, can you tell us about another benefit that you see to attending a 4-year college generally? What's one benefit that you're particularly excited about?
Well, I love this question because I think so often we're such an outcomes driven society right now. And so many people looking at higher ed are really thinking about, what is this going to get me when I'm done? And that's really logical and important. You want to know what this investment of your time and money is going to result in terms of benefits for your life. But sometimes that can be taken too far and kind of start to be counted as merely an accumulation of credits or a checking off of boxes of taking certain classes, and how quickly can I do that and move on to the next thing. And I think there's this incredible benefit of spending at least those traditional years. If someone comes straight from high school, the years between 18 and 22 are incredible years of growth for people, whether they're in college or not. Our brains are doing really interesting and incredible things during that developmental time. And the advantages of being in a community, a consistent community where you are fostered in that growth and development that is not just academic, but it's social, it's emotional, sometimes it's spiritual, it can be physical. There's so much that is supported about the whole person in terms of the way you grow and change and learn, that goes beyond just the academic piece. And I think that happens in a really incredible way when it can be consistently at the same place for all 4 years because of the community piece that Madi mentioned. You're just, you're able to connect and grow in a way that's really important.
Yeah. Jen, Sue mentioned things beyond academics. Can you talk a little bit about some of the kinds of things that students can experience that are outside of academics? So Sue mentioned them. Can you go a little more in depth?
Yeah, for sure. I think Madi touched on this in her first answer. Athletics is a big part of a lot of students' kind of typical 4-year college experience. Even if you're not involved in athletics or don't particularly enjoy watching it, there's a lot of student leadership opportunities that I know at least Western can provide for students. So this can be working with other students. It can be giving tours to prospective students or working with incoming students, planning events, working with student government or hall government. Those are a lot of great opportunities for students that go outside of academics. On top of that, you have a lot of social experiences that you can go through. So clubs are really popular. At Western, we have a very easy process to making a club. So we have clubs popping up all the time, but we also have kind of those tried and true clubs like Multicultural Student Union that always do the great events and things like that. So those are some really common non-academic things that happen at colleges.
Great. And I'm thinking of another non-academic thing that happens as well, and that is a lot of students live on campus. Well, one of you, Madi, you nodded especially quickly. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means for students or some benefits of living on campus?
Yeah, a lot of universities and colleges are actually requiring incoming students, depending on how close you live to the school, to live in their dorms. And so those opportunities are great for students who are nervous about making community when going to college, nervous about, finding their own people. Maybe they had that in high school and they're looking for that in college, or maybe they didn't have that in high school. So living in the dorms will give you that social dynamic, that family, that second home. So knowing that kind of is waiting for you as a student. Now, if you are interested in, yes, working in the resident's life and becoming a resident assistant, you actually get to live on that floor with those students, and you're kind of seen as that mentor. So it's a great opportunity to get, your housing paid for. But then there's also going to be chances to meet new people from all over. The majority of students at Pacific come from out of state. So being Oregon students, you get to know many different people. Your roommate might be from Hawaii, and that's where you spend your spring break, because you fly back to Hawaii with them. So you get to understand many different perspectives, because you're hanging out with them by the foosball table. You're burning mac and cheese in the communal kitchen together. It's those experiences that make college so unique. Like you were saying, even those 18 to 22-year-old years of being so important for people to have the opportunity to meet others, those friendships you'll have for life. So that's where a lot of that happens in the dorms. And we try to replicate that for transfer students as well, but it's such a unique experience.
Well, I can say, like, just for myself, that one of the more mundane things, but feels really practical now as I have to be an adult and cook for myself every day. I wasn't living at home. So Jen was talking about how she was ready to get away from her parents. I sort of was too. I wanted something different. But I don't think I was really ready for the things that being an adult means, of having to cook for myself every day and think about what I'm going to eat for 3 times a day. Somebody did that for me, right? I also always had all of my closest friends right there. If I just wanted to do something, I wanted somebody to talk to, all I had to do was knock on the door next to mine. And, COVID aside, now, I have to actually make a plan to see my friends, right? But if you're living in a dorm, you don't have to do that. So there's some of the really lofty kinds of things that we can talk about, but there's also just some really practical, easy things. Are there any others like that? Do any of you have any things that you really loved about a 4-year experience that maybe we don't talk about that often? Like, who talks about the fact that you don't have to cook for yourself for 4 years, right? But that's a real thing. Are there any other things like that you can think of that people maybe don't talk about that often?
Yeah, I would bring up one, which is study abroad, which I did not participate in. So I'd love to hear from any of you if you have. But study abroad opportunities are certainly something that's on the mind of a student when they're continuously here on campus and they're hearing about it. They're seeing it at the clubs and organizations fair. They're getting information about how to afford that financially. I didn't study abroad because, 1, I was intimidated, and 2, I didn't speak another language. And I thought that it was going to be so expensive. Turns out you get to use a lot of your financial aid, a lot of your scholarships to help you go. So I think financial aid or study abroad is a huge piece of that 4-year experience.
Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of students. Sue?
I was just going to add, Adrienne, I so appreciate what you're saying about, not necessarily being ready right off the bat to do all of the adult things that you have to do. At Willamette, we require, like I think Madi was saying, we require students to live on campus for 2 years, but fully half of our juniors and seniors continue to live on campus for all 4 years because they like it. It's convenient. It's fun. The food is really good. People come across the street from the Capitol all the time to eat their lunch at Willamette because it's like a restaurant. They're not doing that this year, but typically they do. So, there's something about it that's really special. And it's the one time in your life that you kind of get to live in community in that way. And so taking advantage of that is great. It also goes by so fast. The 4 years, it just goes like that. I can always or I can never believe how quickly it feels like students who come into Willamette who maybe work in our office, or we get to know how quickly they're suddenly done. And so to be in one place for all 4 years and really be able to soak up all of the opportunities that are offered, you can hardly pack them all in. There are so many. And so there's great advantage to being at that one place for all 4 years and being able to really connect and do all of the things that are available. Those all contribute to your growth and development and learning.
Great, thank you. We we have a visitor. It's okay, Jen. Like this is the reality of life these days. We've spent some time talking about the benefits maybe of attending a 4-year college or university all 4 years, but certainly it's the case that a number of students will start at a community college and transfer. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time asking or talking about the students who that might be a really good option for and who that might not be a good option for, right? So sort of thinking about who is the student that it might really make sense for them to consider starting at a 2-year and then transferring to a 4-year. Jen, do you have any thoughts about sort of in your mind what students would benefit from thinking about that transfer option?
Yeah, of course. I think the first type of student that comes to mind are students that really aren't sure what they want to study. A really great benefit of kind of starting at a community college and then going to a 4-year, transferring over, is being able to kind of get the best of both worlds. You get all of the different types of classes that a community college might offer, and then you can really get specialized work and courses once you start figuring out what you want to do at that university. So that's kind of the first student that pops into mind. As far as transfer students, I think also a lot of students who identify as non-traditional. So maybe if they already have dependents by the time they graduate high school, either younger or older, if maybe they have different physical or intellectual disabilities that make it harder for them for any type of reason, then that can be a really great thing to do and start in a community college or a 2-year.
Okay. Are there other students, Maddie or Sue, that you can think of that it might be a good idea to consider that option?
Yeah, I can speak to academics a bit. So oftentimes students are looking to college to jump right in, but sometimes they're not ready. Maybe it's life circumstances throughout high school where they weren't able to fully immerse themselves in education, and maybe it's that they weren't interested and are now interested in college, but maybe not ready for the academic rigor that can sometimes come with starting out in school. I know that there was certainly a learning curve with chemistry for myself, never having taken it in high school and then having to take it in college was certainly underprepared. So for students who, may be wanting to look to college, but not quite sure on the academics, being able to start right away, a community college route, getting that foundation in the math and the sciences, and then transferring over and being able to start right on the ground, feet running, and being able to work with professors on projects where they're not having to, spend time, really late at night studying and learning everything once again. They can still work with tutors, but they're able to jump right in and start. I'd say that that's a really great opportunity for students to get a foundation to then transfer.
And that foundational piece, I think, for students who might be looking at a more selective college or university, but maybe don't have the academic preparation in high school or their GPA that selective college and coursework that college is looking for, having a little bit of a foundation coming out of a community college may give them an opportunity to have a better shot at having access to a more selective institution. Does that sound right? Sue, you're nodding.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what Maddie was hinting at, that sometimes mean, the majority of the students at Willamette are first-year students coming out of high school, but we do look for really good transfer students every year too. We know that transfer students, whether they're coming from a community college or another four-year college, they add tremendous dimension to our classroom spaces. They bring a different perspective. We love having them. They just are a little bit of a smaller number for us. And in some cases, they are folks who might not have been admissible if they had come to us straight from high school. They might not have had that foundation that they needed. And so to go and kind of reestablish themselves and get to that point of being able to manage college curriculum through a community college, that can be a really, really effective stepping stone to ultimately the four-year degree that they would like to have. To me, the key is staying in touch with the four-year institution that they're looking toward, even as they start out at that two-year school. It can be easy to fall away or drift away from that ultimate plan of a bachelor's degree eventually, if you're not really in connection with that college that you're working toward. So that's my big piece of advice for those who are looking to take that route. We love to hear from those students, and we want to be advising them right from the beginning.
I think that's excellent advice. Thank you, Sue. And it leads me into a little bit of a next question, which was, again, last night in talking about community colleges, we learned about degree partnership programs, also sometimes called dual enrollment or co-admission. And Jen, I'm going to ask you to answer this question because I know that Western has this as an option. And this is the opportunity for a student to enroll both at a community college and a university, and to take classes on both campuses if they like. What do you think are the advantages, Jen, of this kind of opportunity? Specifically thinking about students who want to ultimately, obviously, get that four-year degree. Are there advantages for a student starting that way?
Definitely. I think there are a lot of advantages to starting with being in a degree partnership program. When you are enrolled in two different colleges, then you get essentially double the courses. So maybe something works with you really well online, but the four-year college doesn't offer it online. You can go over to the two-year college and see if they offer.
You really get to make sure that you are picking the classes that work best for you, the times that work best for you. Maybe you, if you're commuting to one college or another, you want to focus on staying closer for your in-person classes, but maybe you're fine just taking online classes at the other college. So you really get that flexibility with taking advantage of both schedules and just making something that works for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And this is my ignorance. I know that all of our community colleges and all of our public universities have partnerships, these degree partnership programs. And I don't know if any of our private colleges or universities in the state have those same relationships with our community colleges. Sue or Madi, do you know, or do either of your institutions have something similar?
We have articulation agreements with a number of community colleges that speak to the ease of transitioning in, but we do not currently have a dual enrollment program. We've talked with Shemekiah about it, and I wouldn't say that it might not happen eventually, but right now it's not in place. I'm really in favor of this kind of program, though, because I do think it keeps students focused on ultimately completing that four-year degree that they really want to complete. And so I think these really help solve that problem of the students that might drift away from that ultimate goal.
Madi, does Pacific have?
No, we are very similar to Willamette. We work really well with a lot of the Portland community colleges in the area, helping students transfer those credits pretty seamlessly. But overall, no, we do not have active programs. Now, conversations happening, just like Sue was saying, at Willamette. Similar things are happening at Pacific, but nothing in concrete.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're watching this now, if and when our private colleges and universities instate those, we will make sure that that information is available on the Oregon Goes to College website so that folks know about that when it happens. And the articulation agreement, Sue, that you mentioned, and then Madi, you said seamless transition. For those who don't know, who are watching, basically what that means is that the four-year colleges have been working with the community colleges in order to sort of identify which classes will transfer and how those will transfer into the university. And that goes back specifically to what Sue was talking about earlier about the importance of having those conversations early and often, I assume, to make sure that if you do start in a community college and you're transferring into the four-year, you're on track and prepared to do that. And those articulation agreements can help sort of with those conversations and knowing what to take. I want to remind our viewers that if you have any questions, you can enter them into the YouTube chat. I forgot to say that and more frequently, but you can enter those into the YouTube chat and we will get them to our panelists. I have what I hope is a fun question, sort of back to the idea of just back to those benefits. What is one opportunity? I'm going to ask each of you to respond to this. What is one opportunity that is available to students at your university that might not be available at a two-year college? So, like, what's a thing that is available to your students that might not be available outside of the four-year system? Who wants to start? Madi, I see that you have unmuted yourself.
I will start, yes. So some really unique opportunities at Pacific will be to work with professors either on their own research or on your independent research that you're interested in. That can start really as early as freshman year, depending on how much of a go-getter you are as a student, what you want to geek out with those faculty members, those professors, those teachers you're working with. At Pacific, those opportunities come from you getting to know those professors. You get to meet them, before you even get here, and then they're going to be here all 4 years. Those are the people teaching your courses. So when it comes to your interests, a research question that you have, not only with microscopes and watching cells grow, but also when it comes to education, trying different curriculum in the classroom, working in our sports medicine department, in exercise equipment, is it useful? So there are so many different ways that research can happen. So I do want to say that. But one of those unique opportunities can be to develop that relationship with the professor so that when you're then interested in joining them, that relationship is there and you're able to jump right in, whether it's in your actual classes or doing some type of summer research. So an extended opportunity too, which is a great chance to really dive in and have something awesome on your resume. So you're not only getting a degree, right? Many of the schools have these opportunities that get you a great resume too.
Great. Thank you, Madi. Jen, what's something that a student can do at Western that they might not be able to do at a two-year college or university?
Yeah, like Madi said, we have a lot of great opportunities with professors, and going to those four-year colleges really allow you to get those connections and relationships with professors. For Western, I would say it's more of kind of an internship type thing. You get that networking starting as soon as you kind of start looking out for it. Another thing that I would like to add is our honors program is really valuable and beneficial for a lot of students that they might not have the opportunity to go through if they only go to a two-year college or if they end up transferring. Our honors college focuses a lot more on discussion and smaller class sizes, and you actually get to have your own undergraduate thesis by the time that you graduate from our university. So I think that's something that's really unique that a lot of four-year colleges provide for students.
Great, thanks. Sue, tell us about Willamette, something that you've got that is special.
There are a lot of things that come to mind that I think are available. The one that I guess the one that I'll talk about, we've already touched on a little bit, but the opportunity to live on campus and live in community with peers, that happens at a 4-year institution. Obviously not just Willamette, but it's hard to overstate how important that is, because a lot of the learning that happens isn't just from these incredible faculty. It happens because you're surrounded by peers who are similarly motivated, who are also exploring what they're going to do once they complete their degree. And I think there's a focus on that might be different at the 4-year college level, that really helps with motivation and completion. And that comes because students are living together and learning together on this very consistent basis. There's less distraction, I think, sometimes than you might find at the 2-year college, where you might have a lot of classmates who really aren't working toward a degree necessarily. They're just taking a class or two. Most students are commuting to and from. It's just a little bit of a different environment, and the focus that comes with both living and learning on a campus like Willamette's, I think, is really unique and beneficial.
Great. Thank you. I have one last question that we've been asking on all of the panels, and it has nothing to do with the benefits of a 4-year university, but is something that we know is on students' minds. And so we're trying to ask everybody who joins us in these panels, just so that we get the best advice that's out there in our state right now. And that is that we know students are thinking a lot about COVID, and in particular, as they're applying to college this year, and not really certain what's going to happen in the fall. And of course, none of us know what's going to happen in the spring or the fall. But I know that some students are wondering, should I still apply? What's the best advice that you have for a student who's sort of thinking about the uncertainty of what's happening and their college search? Should they still apply? Should they hold off? What's your best advice for students in this moment right now? Madi, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would encourage students to apply. Absolutely. Applying opens the door. You can always say no after you've been admitted. Certainly, you can say no after you receive, that financial aid package if it's finances that you're concerned about. So really applying opens the door for the opportunity. Now, if you're concerned about the application process, taking advantage of different schools are offering you different ways to talk about it, how you uniquely have been impacted, because we know it's different for every student, especially our Oregon students. So I would say certainly apply, but also consider what you're comfortable with. Living on campus, attending classes in person, being remote. Many schools like Pacific are offering the student the choice. So a hybrid model. Do you want to live on campus and take your classes online? So knowing what you feel comfortable with, and that if it's important for you to have some flexibility in what's required of you as a student, look for those schools that are going to offer that. That way you'll be able to make what's comfortable for you and your family, your support network. So I'd say definitely apply, because you can always say no later.
Jen, what's your best advice for students in this time?
I would definitely say apply as well. Specifically with Western, I've been telling a lot of students, if you're not sure if you want to come fall term, maybe you want to go next winter, all you need to do to change that after you apply and get accepted is send us an email. There's no additional fees or anything like that. So as far as processes and making decisions, that's kind of one of the easiest ones you have after applying to Western. Additionally, ask questions, make those connections with admissions counselors or professors or advisors. If you have opportunities to reach out to current students, maybe student ambassadors, learn about what their life is like right now, learn about what support systems their 4-year colleges are providing for them, because that's going to be what you should be expecting for the year to come. You should be looking at what is everything happening right now, maybe finding a little less, hopefully a little less than what it currently is. And that's kind of what you should be looking at. but just making sure that you really find that university that's providing students with the support that they need, and allows them to make the decisions that are comfortable for them, because after all, this is their experience, and they are the ones that need to figure out what can make them thrive.
Great. And Sue, what's your best advice about this time?
Well, I would say, I mean, I agree with Jen and Maddie. Apply. I do think students should enter this process despite this crazy world we're living in right now. I think we shouldn't let this thing derail our plans. And I feel like I've gotten so many questions throughout the fall from parents and students, people who are just so stressed out about the fact that they don't think their application will look right because their grades were different in the spring, or they haven't had as easy access to classes or to teachers this fall. They're worried that their activities section won't look full because they couldn't play their sport, or they couldn't be in the choir, or all the different things that they would normally do. They're not there. So people are carrying such stress about this. They couldn't take standardized tests if they needed them for certain applications. So my big advice is try to let go of some of that stress and know that those of us like Jen and Maddie and I, we are really prepared to read applications that are going to look a little bit different. We know that everybody has been impacted by this, and we understand that that's going to come through in the application, and we're not going to hold against you something that you couldn't have control of. We're really interested in still helping give access to our institutions. And I know at Willamette, we're really interested in having individual interviews with any and every applicant that we possibly can, more so than we normally do. Excuse me. Because we really want applicants to have that one-on-one opportunity to ask us questions and give us context for what their life has been like. So I feel like in this strange year, there's actually more access to admission professionals and to virtual visits than there ever has been before. So in this weird way, students have a really good opportunity to explore and to connect. And I would really encourage students to do that. They might find that some of that stress dissipates and there is some real hopefulness about what the opportunities are.
That is fantastic advice and a very good way to close us out. The idea that if you have questions, reach out. Folks really want to talk to you. And my guess is that Maddie, Sue, and Jen would be happy to talk to anybody about the college process, even if you're not thinking about their institutions, that they would be happy to share additional advice with you, or to just answer your questions and help set you in the direction that it makes the most sense for you. And so I want to thank the three of you for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts and your best advice. And I want to remind everybody who's watching that if you have more questions about attending college in Oregon, a really great place to start is OregonGoesToCollege.org. And from there, you'll find links to every college in the state and good information about what you need to know to apply, pay, and go and prepare for that whole process. So thank you again for joining us, to the three of you, but also to those who are watching us live and who come and join us a little bit later in the recording. And with that, I think we'll say good night. And I hope everyone has a good evening. See you all.